This is their chance. Take down Rutgers. Come on.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. All you got to do is place your first $5 bet, and you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed by going to FanDuel.com to get started. Where we get started, our usual Friday, day before UCLA football game, although we'll have to change it when it comes to those Friday games. UCLA, what are the keys to game, keys to victory, all right? This is one of those opportunities for UCLA after that 3-game trudge through ranked opponents, which has turned into 4 straight games, 2 of which in the top 10. Indiana might be banking on a top 10 if they beat Nebraska. And then you faced a Minnesota team who was favored, and then UCLA couldn't close the door against the Golden Gophers in the Rose Bowl. Rutgers, not favored by much. It's supposed to be within a 1-score game, less than a touchdown. And now UCLA's on the road. Couple of key players hurt, but Rutgers also hurting as well with a struggling offense. I know as much as UCLA was crushed last week, this is as golden as an opportunity UCLA is going to get another win and get their first Big Ten win and get that as a notch on their belt. All right. So what does UCLA need to do? Well, first off, offensively, it's going to come down to UCLA not turning over the football. This is the same old song. All right. The same old song. Can UCLA not turn over the football? Every time Garbers has started a game for this UCLA team this year, it has resulted in at least 2 or more turnovers that he started. Every game. The only game that he's not, that was Justyn Martin. Garbers was held out, and he didn't. So you're looking at me, the same guy that says, start Ethan Garbers every week, and it's like, Zach, you're a literal idiot. How do you watch what's on the field? Whether it's talking to the Rutgers podcast, right? I had a good time talking with some Rutgers guys yesterday on a different podcast. Whether it's you guys commenting, they haven't said I'm an idiot, and I know you guys probably think I am, for continuing to back Ethan Garbers. This is the last week that I think Garbers will have an opportunity to keep that starting nod. Because next week, then UCLA gets a bit of a break. They get to go to Nebraska, and everything starts, not easing up, but it turns into, do we keep starting the senior captain or we don't? Well, Garbers was the starting option and the clear-cut starting option after last year when you had a 5-star quarterback. You had a quarterback who started elsewhere in college football at the FBS level. Garbers was still better than them. But the ability to grasp this offense and the inability to stay in the pocket for any quarterback behind this offensive line and being kept upright has been a problem. So for Garbers, his start this week could maintain his job for the rest of the season, or maybe on a week-by-week basis, heading into the rest of the 24 schedule. He turns it over twice in the first half. I think you yank the kid and you bring in Justyn Martin and you hope UCLA goes for the win. All right. What was the one thing Chip Kelly didn't do last year when Moore was scared, or, when he, had that freshman look in his eyes after a pick 6 at Utah that set forward a trend of turnovers leading to touchdowns for the opposition, leading to scores off turnovers for their opponents last year when UCLA should have been a 10-win team. Let's be honest. Their defense was so legit. They shouldn't have lost to Utah's backup quarterback when Rising didn't play a single game. Even though Utah's defense was legit, UCLA shouldn't have been losing at Utah. And they should have been losing to Cal. Shouldn't have been losing to Arizona State. You can give Utah that game because that was a tough early season road game with a true freshman quarterback. That was in 23. And Chip Kelly didn't go to Garbers. Now what Deshaun Foster has in front of him with Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator, is a decision to make. If that is presented in front of them in this game with a turnover or just some ugly play, right? If you go out there and Garbers throws a pick on the first drive, if he throws a pick on the first drive and is under 50% with his completion percentage, which is what it was for a large portion of this first half of the season, if that's how it looks, you got to make the switch to Martin, right? That is where I'm jumping on the bandwagon. But then you have to live with the results of Martin for the rest of the game and maintain him as a starter, I think, for the next week or so, all right? Or have a quarterback battle during the bye week. This is where I think if Garbers plays all right, you can reassess during the bye week and then flip to Martin. Under no circumstances should you start Martin and pull him for Garbers. That is not the right message to be sending to a young quarterback. You want him to be that spark plug to come in for Garbers if that is to be the case, and hopefully he plays well and gives the team momentum into the bye week where they change some installs and race through the back half of the schedule, which hopefully can be a lot easier than what it was with 4 straight ranked opponents as UCLA is sitting on their 5th straight loss. Okay, but large in part, the first key to this game is making sure you don't turn it over. UCLA can't win these games because every single time they're losing the turnover battle, and they're certainly not winning it. And the one time they did was against Hawaii, was when they forced a few turnovers in that second half, forced Braden Shager, the Hawaii starting quarterback, into some fumbles, or receiver into a fumble and a pick or two. Even with Garbers turning it over twice in that week 1 game. All right? That was the only time UCLA has won the turnover battle. All right? They have not been close ever since. So you have to not turn it over, win the turnover battle kind of together. All right? And now UCLA has to, which can help either quarterback, whether it's a Martin or a Garbers, take a lot of pressure off their shoulders. All right? Garbers is continuing to break his career high for passing yards in a game because UCLA can't run the ball. Minnesota came in with not the best yards per carry mark, although USC ran it on them, Michigan ran it on them, a little more physical teams up front. UCLA did not pose that same threat to Minnesota last week, who shut down the Bruins to, I think, a tune of 1.3 yards, 1.3 yards per carry. All right? That's not going to cut it. But one of the big numbers in this game is how will the running game stack up offensively and defensively, okay? Where can UCLA become a more efficient team? When they run the ball and they're successful. That's what UCLA was able to do to spark a couple of drives against Penn State. The inability to get a first down against Minnesota was because UCLA just ran it into the teeth of a defense expecting the run, knowing that the offensive line could not get a push this year based on the design of the run game. Can UCLA run it? All right, Rutgers defensively allows 182 yards per game running the football. One of the worst teams in the FBS across the country. And then Wisconsin last week, a team that's pretty physical, ran it for over 300 yards against Rutgers, a team that has a backup quarterback because their starting quarterback was out for the year. So if there's ever a chance for your running game to surpass 100 yards, regardless of how well you protect the quarterback and keep him upright with the sack numbers that are negatives towards your rushing game, can UCLA surpass 100? And let's get a little crazy and get to 125 yards, all right? So for UCLA, win/equal the turnover battle, I think you got to win it. 2, can your running game control the clock, control possession, make it third and manageable, second and manageable, which opens up more windows in some of these plays that Eric Bieniemy is trying to call for Garbers down the field for J. Michael Sturdivant. Mind you, UCLA's not been with Rico Flores in some time. They're without Ruben Unigier, one of those starting offensive linemen. So it's been tough sledding for UCLA to get clicking on offense. Don't turn it over. Duh. Don't be hasty with a quick switch. But when it's clear, you got to make it happen at the quarterback room. And then most importantly, run the football. Can they run the football? If you can't run the football against a team in Rutgers who gives up 182 yards per game on the ground, then UCLA's running game is just toast. All right. If you can't run the ball against the Scarlet Knights, then you are toast. Toast in the running game, right? I'm not sure you can. But this is a great opportunity to see Harden or Berger or Keegan Jones break off a big run, right? This could be one of those games where we see Keegan Jones have a big bursting run through this, burst through a hole and get a big 50-yard touchdown run. some of the better numbers maybe for Harden. He might not churn out a lot of yards, but this could be one of his best yards per carry games of the season, even if he doesn't get over 100 yards individually, which he's been nowhere near this season, no fault of his own. He could have maybe 4 yards per carry. Keegan Jones breaks through something. Berger gets a first down. Those are the recipes for success. And the run game is also important because they got to stop Kyle Monangai. All right, let's talk about Rutgers next on Locked On UCLA. Guys, ever feel like you need a boost in the bedroom? It's time that you stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can get your confidence going and know that you can get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. The process is 100% online, so there's no need to be uncomfortable doctor's visits, all right? No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With the hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right, here we go. We're talking more keys to the game. This one more specific on the defensive side of things. We talk a lot about the run game. Well, Rutgers prides themselves with a top-tier running back, although their second running back just went down for the season. So they're a little bit banged up as well. But this is going to be a bit strength versus strength. All right, this is a prove-it opportunity for UCLA. Are they that physical defense that the numbers prove when facing the running game? Or is it because they can't generate a pass rush, they don't blitz, they don't pressure the quarterback, that the opposition does not need to run the football? All right, the only team that successfully ran the ball was Oregon. All right, and yes, Minnesota did a little bit, LSU, Penn State a little bit, although Penn State was without their top tailback, or helped out by Hawaii, who likes to throw the ball 45 times a game, even though Shager was banged up, couldn't run. UCLA is surprisingly amongst one of the nation's best when it comes to stopping the run. All right. One of the best. All right. So Rutgers and their running back, Kyle Monangai, 7 touchdowns, 5.5 yards per carry. All right. That is what the Rutgers running back goes. And if UCLA can stop him, then they will be in this game time and time again. All right. So what can UCLA do? Well, so far, the Bruins allow under 100 yards per game on the ground. Mind you, they were one of the best teams in the country stopping the run last year. This year, they're somewhat similar. That helps because Jay Tuia, who I talked about yesterday in the last podcast for Locked On UCLA, is a guy taking up 2 to 3 offensive linemen to focus on the interior defensive linemen. And that leaves Schlesinger, Madrano, the other defensive lineman, Femi, to go make some plays in the backfield and get a couple of tackles for loss like UCLA got against Minnesota. But when teams are throwing the ball, because you can't rush the passer and the secondary can't hold up for 7 seconds, it's going to lighten the load. So this will prove if UCLA is really a top 15 team in the country when stopping the run. All right? This is what UCLA will have to face. This is an opportunity to say, if Akaika Malloy, the UCLA defensive coordinator in his first year, can drum up a performance where they stop Rutgers on the ground, which is their bread and butter. All right, that was their bread and butter, even with the quarterback in the transfer portal that they stole from Minnesota, ironically. If they can stop the Rutgers running game, and this is an offense that's been beleaguered and struggling in its own right, but they can stop a Rutgers running game and a running back that has proven to be a very capable running back, taking multiple defenders for him to go down for the Rutgers senior back, then we know that I think Malloy is at least a defensive coordinator for another couple of years, or a year or two, right? It seems like it's a year-to-year basis, depending on how long Deshaun Foster and the whole staff is here. But Martin Jarmon's gone out and said, this is the man. This is the guy. And Deshaun Foster won't be fired after this year. It's highly unlikely, regardless of what you think or what I think. It's just unlikely. And you start to look at people who could get fired. A good performance by Kaika Malloy continued throughout the year is going to keep his job. He is good when it comes to recruiting. I believe he's very good in the locker room. He's very personable. He's passionate. All right? Very passionate. And the defense has not dropped off terribly from last year's super successful season with D'Anton Lynn. And the reason why it's not been that big is because Kaika Malloy is trying to mask and disguise things, in the places where they're weak are places where we knew the defense would be weak this year. All right? So if UCLA holds Rutgers to under 100 yards rushing, my number is 125, right? 125. Which team is closer to that on the ground? A terrible UCLA rushing attack or a pretty solid Rutgers running team? If UCLA is closer to 125 and let alone surpasses that number, I believe, for what would be the first time all year, regardless of how Rutgers runs the football, then I think UCLA wins this football game. If UCLA sputters but keeps Rutgers well underneath that number, well beneath that, then I think UCLA is in this game till deep in the fourth quarter. It's going to come down to which team makes a mistake in the fourth, plays a cleaner football game, that will determine the winner. All right? So defense, yes, I like to see pressure. I like to see sacks. This game is hell-bent on UCLA stopping the run and then forcing a turnover. Can they win the turnover battle, right? That's kind of a full circle back to the first segment. Can UCLA force that turnover? They couldn't do so against Minnesota. They didn't get Max Brosmer into a situation where he'd throw it into a waiting DB's arms. These cornerbacks have been waiting to get an interception. All right, this is an opportunity to force a pick or two against Rutgers. Maybe punch the ball out from Monangai. All right, that is a perfect opportunity. Speaking of opportunity, this is my chance. I'll tell you what I think this game will be here next in my prediction time on Locked On UCLA. Hey, NFL fans, UCLA fans, you can start the season big or keep it going on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you want to check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, $5 bet, your first one, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Right now, this game, Rutgers, -4.5. All right, so they're a bigger favorite than what Minnesota was, as I think the gates closed, the numbers closed. It was 3.5 for Minnesota UCLA, and Minnesota just covered, closing the streak of UCLA covers. Here's the note when you're trying to bet this game. UCLA, as a one-score underdog, has not covered, mostly because Minnesota won by 4 last week. When they've been bigger underdogs, they've covered every time against the LSUs and the Oregons and the Penn States. Do with that information as you will, all right? Go to FanDuel.com and check on the UCLA Rutgers game. It's Rutgers -4.5. You're going to hit it, bet against UCLA, and hope they get their first win? FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, here we go. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, I went on a limb. I picked UCLA to win last week. It was actually, if you think about it, UCLA 17-14 against Minnesota late. So my 20-17 UCLA prediction was almost on par with what could have happened if UCLA forced a field goal and could have won it late against Minnesota. Now, does UCLA have the energy? They have to show up in this game. I think UCLA needs to score first. They need to show the energy and know how to, again, play with a lead. They were up 10-0 at the break against Minnesota, playing a perfect, in my mind, first half. Now you go across the country for what seems like the third straight of every other week, right? You play it at Hawaii, break, home game, go across the country, come back, go across the country, come back, go across the country, and come back again. That's the life in the Big Ten, with the addition of the 2 extra far non-league games, non-conference games at LSU and at Hawaii. going to New Jersey for the first time in UCLA's football history, well, that's just going to add to it. So how does UCLA respond? Do they give up? Do they want to win this game? Do they have the heart to play for their first-year head coach with some struggling offensive members, with a defense that hasn't been clutch in certain situations yet, other than the week 1 win against Hawaii, where they've been put their backs against the wall and the offense can't do the same on the other end? What do I think is going to happen? I was on a Rutgers podcast, and I'm going to go with the bet against UCLA rule here. All right? They've broken my heart. They've crushed my soul. And I guess maybe the signs were there that this would be a down year as the Bruins are 1-5, and they're running out of opportunities where they can get one Big Ten win, let alone multiple in the same season. And I'm frustrated to say that, but that's the opportunity. UCLA probably won't be favored for the rest of the season, even in the Fresno State game at home. All right? I'm not sure UCLA will be favored in that game. UCLA won't be favored, and they're not favored in this game. I want to say UCLA will win this game. I am going to say Rutgers will win this game by 10, like a 17-7, right? 27-17. As much as it pains me to say that, because UCLA has to prove us all wrong. They have to prove everybody wrong because they've been proving all the most negative pundits correct every single time. All right? And I want that to change so desperately. I want to go on the Big Ten squad and come up there and be like, let's go. UCLA isn't going to go winless. They're not going to be the worst. I don't want them to finish in the 15th spot in the Big Ten conference, but at the moment that they're way lower than that in their preseason prediction with the Cleveland.com, media preseason selection poll, right, where UCLA would finish. But they got to prove it. So I'm going to go with the bet against UCLA rule here. I'm going to say they'll lose by 10. I'm optimistic that they can certainly win this game. There's certainly many ways UCLA can win this game. Can they execute? Have they proven they can? They have not done so at all, right? Maybe they throw a bunch and they get into a mini shootout for the UCLA-Rutgers game, which in this year for UCLA would be 27-24 because the Bruins have not scored 20 points this year, right? If you've seen the graphic, I think on social media, they posted a graphic with all the FBS teams, all the NFL teams, and the only teams between the NFL and the FBS that have not scored 20 points this season have been UCLA and the Cleveland Browns. All right? Ironically, both have one win. I think they might have the identical records. But the Bruins need to get the job done. All right? They have to score 20-plus points in this game to make it happen, I think. I'm not sure they can or they will. I want to be wrong. I'm looking at you. We're cheering. I'm going to watch this game. I'm going to be super excited for Deshaun Foster to do something here. But we're going bet against UCLA. I say they lose by 10. Then you're going to stick around for the reaction. I'll eat my words up. I'll eat them up because I'll be super excited. But I can't reasonably come on this podcast and say right now, in any game where they are an underdog and they're going across the country, because the numbers in the Big Ten have not favored the teams going on the road. Ohio State just went to Oregon and lost. All right? All the Big Ten teams that are winning on the road are the ones that are coming to UCLA. So what makes me think UCLA is going to go on the road and win this game? They have to hit those keys. If they're a physical team that can stop the run, that'll help them this week against Rutgers, and it'll help them in their next home game against Iowa a couple weeks from now. And give us more confidence that if UCLA can win this game, then they're not going to end the season on 2 wins. I think. That's my bold take. They win this game, I think they at least get to 3. Literally makes me barf from my mouth saying those words. But they win this game, I don't think they stick at 2. I think they can get to a 3rd win. But they don't win this game, they'll be hard-pressed to find a 2nd win this year. That's just how they've looked. And there's still, the need to give Deshaun Foster time and maybe and most definitely reevaluate the Eric Bieniemy hire in the offseason. He's got a 2-year contract, or maybe give an opportunity for a 2nd year and not waste all the money on the buyout while you facilitate that to other assistants to get a full, complete staff that you want and use the NIL funds to go improve the roster. At the moment, UCLA's got to score more than 20 points. Have the defense prove they're physical and get a sack and win a game against a equally struggling team in Rutgers who does have a winning record, but man, they're struggling too. All right? This is UCLA's chance. Go do it. Go do it. Yes, I say they're going to lose by 10. Go prove me wrong. I'm saying that with a smile. All right? If you're listening, I'm saying that with a smile because I do believe it's a bet against UCLA rule right now. All right? Prove me wrong. Prove everybody wrong. Go Bruins. So get your hands up. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Remember, we'll have the reaction right after the UCLA Rutgers game. We'll talk about it in depth with emotions extremely heavy. And I'm hoping it's that second win. And we can get a big victory and get that Big Ten dub. All right? This is Zach signing off. Go Bruins.